Addictions. Everyone's got them. Today we're going to talk about how we've overcome our addictions. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Iron Sharpens Iron. Today we have a great episode on addictions. And before we get into that and go on a deep dive, we're each going to give our personal definition of addiction and what it means to us.
Yeah, so for me, addiction is when you have consequences piling up and you continue to do that. An extreme example would be someone who's addicted to drugs. They take away their child and tell them to stop doing the drugs, and they'll bring the child back and they say, I'm going to keep doing drugs. For me, that's a very sign of a hard consequence and a very bad addiction, and not letting go of that addiction. So for me, that's the definition, is having mega consequences and not being able to drop that addiction to stop those consequences.
Perfect. And for what I've been able to grasp what addiction is going through life, simply put, repeated cycles and habits that hinder your growth. Simply put.
Good. Yeah.
Right. So now let's go ahead and get into it. Our first question is going to be, what are 2 to 3 addictions that are bad and why? What are the negatives to those addictions?
Yeah, so for my 2 to 3 negative addictions, first one is very obvious. It's hard drugs, and it starts out with one small little dose of a drug, and it slowly starts rolling into a daily thing when it was just a weekend thing. Then before you know it, it's overrunning your life. So it kind of starts that way. That's kind of how everything starts, even fitness.
Yeah.
Slowly, a couple push-ups. Before you know it, you're doing even more. Before you know it, you're adding supplements. Before you know it, it's your lifestyle. So, but that's a good addiction. But for me, the obvious one of my negative addictions back in my past were hard drugs. I really thought, like I'm sure everybody does, I have it in control.
Yeah.
And, before you know it, you're there every day at the drug house. Before you know it, you're losing a lot of money. So that's going to be my number one negative addiction, was hard drugs. And my other negative one also, which is going to ruffle some feathers, is coffee and energy drinks. Is a form of addiction for me. And it's a form of addiction where I solely rely on these liquids to give me energy, when that's not sustainable and that's not healthy. And before you know it, I find myself drinking two energy drinks a day plus coffee, and yet I'm kind of groggy still and sleepy.
Yeah.
And yet when I switch that up and I start cutting these things out and I start eating healthier and eating more, I feel almost more energized, as if I'm on that drug for that high I was looking for. And it's like your body naturally wants to give it to you anyways. Just eat healthy, drink a lot of water instead of all these chemicals. And coffee is fine. It's a natural. But again, I found myself going from 2 espressos to 3 espressos to 4 to 5 in a day, and not really being that amped up.
With an energy drink in the day.
Yes,
Dude,
and then so I'd be doing a couple espressos, and then I'd get to work, do a Celsius, maybe even a second one, dude, just trying to get that energy high.
Yeah.
And so that's clearly an addiction. Those things cost money. They add up. So for me, it's going to be the hard drugs. That was a really bad addiction. And how it started rolling in is just little bits at a time. That's why you honestly just don't even just stay away from this stuff, because it's very hard for you to control it. It's very hard. That's why these drug dealers are that rich, So, and then coffee, energy drinks. I think it's more the energy drinks, but also, again, like I said, I was overdoing coffee. So coffee can also be an addiction. So for me, and then the worst part about it is, before anything in the morning, have a coffee, and it kills my appetite. So now I'm not even eating. So yeah, it's just...
It is an appetite suppressant.
Yeah, so it's just really bad.
Yeah.
So for me, it'll be those. As well as a little bit of cannabis. I wouldn't say so much an addiction, but it's definitely something that has become too much of it when it's not really needed. It's fine to unwind, relax at the end of the day, but for me, doing it all day long, and then before you know it, I'm taking naps or groggy, It's definitely a form of addiction where you shouldn't be doing it throughout the day. You could do it at the end of the day when you're ready to relax. That would be a less form of addiction.
Right.
You're done with the day. You've killed the day. You've accomplished so much, and you're gonna go get ready for bed. Okay, unwind a little.
Yeah.
That's fine. But to be doing it throughout the day and kind of be like, this is my enhancer. This is my enhancer. It's like, good luck doing it without them.
Right.
It's almost like, well, you're gonna need a big checkbook to keep writing it, so you can sustain this type of lifestyle you want, you know.
Right.
And again, I'm very into cannabis, but even I notice it could hinder growth.
Overconsumption.
Over if you're constantly doing, it'll hinder your income for sure. That's the number one, and then it may hinder your time where you should be doing something more for yourself instead of just relaxing, you know, because it's just a relaxer.
Okay.
So I think, and for me to overcome these things, especially the hard drugs, was fasting and a higher power. And so having a higher power as well as fasting to the point where I didn't eat anything for 3 days straight. And from then on, I haven't touched a single hard drug in the last 8 years. It's just coffee and cannabis, and it's more limiting myself now a little bit, where to not hinder myself, where I'm noticing, hey, this is starting to cost me a little bit of money, or hey, the coffee's starting to like, I'm starting to lose weight when I'm trying to gain weight
Right.
because I'm not eating enough.
Right.
So definitely fasting and just having that higher power, surrendering myself, knowing I don't have the power to control myself. I need someone else to control, and keep me disciplined. You know, it's kind of like us. We're keeping each other disciplined, right?
Right.
But when you're not around, who am I looking to keep me more disciplined? Obviously myself, but at the same time, it's something bigger that has already laid a foundation and written how I should be living.
Right.
And if I just lived that way a long time ago, I would have evaded a lot of issues. But again, it's the way it had to happen so I could have my growth, you know?
100%.
And there's a lot of people that don't go through that and grow even more.
Yeah.
So again, it's definitely, it could hinder you. Or again, it could make you be amazing and you leave all that behind and you can tell people how you beat your addictions, how you got through all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are going to be my 2-3 on negatives, how I started my addictions, how I overcame my addictions. So yeah, those will be mine.
Okay. So for me, my first one is being addicted to emotionally unavailable people. And basically how I've recollect how it goes is basically when I'm talking to someone and I know that they have past traumas, because I have such a big heart and I care for whoever comes into my life, you know, I try to uplift them, I try to help them grow, try to get them to look inward, and face fears, because that's what I do. And the negative to that is I know not everyone is not like me, and not a lot of people want to face those fears or lean into those uncomfortable feelings. And now I see that in a way it could seem like I'm attacking my partner because I want the best for them, and everybody is on their own personal growth journey at their own pace. And sometimes that happens right away when they meet somebody or on their own. But sometimes it takes years, if not decades, for people to wake up and realize. I mean, I'll be the first one to wake up, 32 years, and here I go. I've been on fire for the past 4 months, but that's just my story. And I think moving forward in relationships, it's just showing that support and just being there for that person and letting them come to me or come to their own senses with things, and just being there for them as they make that change.
More
on their
support
own.
than anything, right?
And
not forceful.
And the only thing I can do is lead by example and be myself, because leading by example and being myself will create that safe space for them to come. Like, me being on top of my stuff will show them that, like, okay, he's doing things the right way, he's disciplined, he's not unstable as a person up here, he's focused, he knows what he wants, he knows what he's doing. So that would allow someone to feel safe, just kind of like with you, brother. I mean, when I found God, you were the first person I reached to because I felt safe, because you opened that for me. and you were disciplined in it, and you always talked about it. So you created that safe space for me. So I feel like as a partner, I have to show that support, but also lead by example in the things that I say.
Definitely.
So that's with emotionally unavailable people. And I'll tie into how I overcame these, because these kind of coincide, but I can add them up at the end. And another one is people pleasing. So growing up, I had siblings, but one was 10 years older, one was a couple years older, but stayed with his dad most of the time, and I was just kind of always alone. I went to my own school, I had my own room, I had to go outside, had to create my own friends, so I was kind of alone a lot. And my dad was kind of always working and wouldn't be there when I get home from school. My mom was always kind of just out and about, and I always had a bunch of free time to myself, and I always tried to create friends and try to create brother figures at school or at home. Kind of a lonely kid, but always wanted to be around people because I didn't have anybody.
Yeah.
And I just remember when I was like in elementary school, like, what can I do to make this person happy? What can I do to make that person be happy? I was that kid in elementary school.
It's crazy that you bring that up as an addiction. That's definitely an addiction.
Yeah,
People pleasing.
And that's kind of where it started. And as I've got older, it was like, how can I bring value to someone else? How can I, and not even worrying about myself, because I have a big heart. I can love, but as I've gotten older, it does take a toll.
Mm-hmm.
Know. So from being a little kid to that's kind of where I've done that. And like the big negatives for me that I've noticed is it's a huge weight on your shoulders, and especially when the effort is put forth and it's not reciprocated. And I'm not saying I would just do things to get something out of somebody. I was doing things to make them happier. But then if I needed something and they weren't able to reciprocate that, that's like really disappointing to me, because it's like, I wouldn't not do that. You see how good I am? You see how much I put in? So it kind of goes over with overcoming it is kind of learning how to say no now. And I'm so grateful for having such a small circle, in that I know who I can go to, and I know what my friends' value are, and they know my value, and it's reciprocated. Everybody I'm with,
that's
everybody
great.
I'm with shows love. Everybody, I know I show love in that circle. And I guess just moving forward in relationships wise, I need to be really big on taking people at face value and not going off of the potential I see of them, because they may not even see that potential in themselves.
Definitely, man.
So that's a really big one for me moving forward. And
man, I really like that one.
Yeah.
People pleasing. That addiction can lead you down a road you so don't want to go.
100%.
All off pleasing someone else who then in return isn't gonna be the same, and that's the power of saying no. It's okay to say no, because in the end, if not, it could lead you down a road you don't want to go. Man, that's such a good one. People pleasing addiction. That's wow. Yeah, definitely, man.
And you really realize who the givers are and who the takers are.
And who just wants to receive all day long.
Everyone in my circle is a giver, and I'm a giver.
I'm a giver. Yeah.
That's why it works. We all have big hearts, no matter what we've been through, whether it's drugs, being with emotionally unavailable people, or people pleasing. Like, we are all givers, and we all love, and we all have big hearts, no matter what we've been through. We choose that instead of being bitter, like we've talked about in previous episodes. We choose to love.
Nice.
And that's mine right there. Those were my addictions. This is why they were bad. And that's pretty much how I've become to overcome them. And that's where it started. When you're younger, like me, to be so self-aware of like knowing when I was a young kid, like I said, I was that kid that was on the playground. Are you my friend? Are you my friend? I was that kid, bro. And as I got older, like middle school, high school, it was trying to find a brother figure.
Yeah.
Benny, you.
I've now myself, as I've entered my 30s, been saying I also am looking for a brother. I'm someone to grow with.
Yeah.
So you together could be addicted to good things and build each other up, you know, exercise, education, whatever it is. An addiction to building up instead of an addiction to just kind of, when you do drugs, you're either doing it with someone or you're by yourself in the shadows doing drugs, you know? So, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Good stuff. That's going to be our episode on addiction. As you guys heard, we talked a little bit about our addictions, how we overcame those addictions, and we even talked about how those started, because that could actually be a key factor in why you're doing these things. So you may want to go back or just sit in peace and just think about, why are you doing these things?
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe drop a comment down below. Talk about a time you were addicted and how you overcame that addiction. It may help someone out. And hit the thumbs up. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.
Later, guys.